Nancy says she's got it. Okay.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Nance. We just
Sorry
started.
about that.
That's fine. We've just started the live streaming and the recording. We're just waiting a moment to actually start the meeting. We just want to make sure that there's no lag for those viewing at home. Through you, Mr. Chair, I am on the Town of Pelham's YouTube channel, and I do see that our streaming is up. It is now 3:58. Whenever you wish to start, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Holly. Thank you, everyone, for being at our first Zoom Committee of Adjustment meeting. Ladies and gentlemen, this is an electronic hearing of the Committee of Adjustment for the Town of Pelham. Everyone present and viewing at home will be given an opportunity to comment on the applications being heard. Please address your comments and questions through the chair. This public meeting has been called to satisfy the requirements of the Planning Act and Council bylaws. Notice of this meeting has been given by prepaid first-class mail to all persons listed as owners in the last revised assessment roll within 60 meters, 200 feet, of the subject properties. In addition, a public notice has been posted on the lands, and information has been provided on the town's Committee of Adjustment webpage. Agencies commenting on applications may request certain conditions be imposed should the application be approved. Voicing objections to these conditions will not adversely affect the committee's decision. The process is as follows. The purpose of the application and relative correspondence will be heard, following which the applicant will be given an opportunity to address the application. Any person concerned with the application will then be given an opportunity to participate in the meeting. If you have pre-registered to speak during the public portion of the application, you will be brought into the Zoom meeting and will be unmuted. Please state your name and mailing address for the record. Please be advised, once you have finished speaking, you will be removed from the Zoom meeting room. If you are live streaming at home and wish to submit a comment during an application, you may do so by emailing clerks@pelham.ca. At the conclusion of the public portion of the meeting, these comments will be read into the record. If you submit comments after the public portion has been closed, your comments will not be considered. At the conclusion of the discussion, the committee will render a decision and advise of any applicable conditions. Specific wording for the conditions will be determined by the committee following the public portion of this hearing. Copies of decisions will be mailed to the applicant or agent and any other person who files a written request. If you wish to be provided a copy of the decision, please contact the Secretary Treasurer in writing as soon as possible. The Secretary Treasurer's contact information is available on the upcoming PowerPoint presentation and available on the town's website. Any person, corporation, or public body has the right to appeal either the decision itself or the conditions of consent to the local appeal body within 20 days of the decision for minor variances and within 20 days of the mailing of the decision for consent applications. Additional information. This meeting is being conducted by Zoom webinar and is also being live streamed on the town's YouTube channel. You may wish to put your view on the gallery view by clicking the top right corner from the speaker view. We ask that you be mindful of background noise for the duration of the meeting. Committee members are asked to mute their microphones until you are asked to speak. Please raise your hand if you would like to speak and vote by raising your hand. Please note that attendees who have registered will remain in the waiting room via telephone or electronically until their application of interest is brought to the committee. Those participating online via Zoom will be asked by the chair to raise their virtual hand when they wish to speak. On a computer, you can do so by clicking on Participants in the bottom center of the screen, and then clicking Raise Hand on the mobile device. On a mobile device, you can tap Raise Hand in the bottom left corner. You will then be called upon to speak, and your microphone will be unmuted by staff. If you are participating by phone, you will be unmuted by staff when the agenda item that you have registered for is being discussed. Applicants and attendees are advised that they are free to leave the webinar once a decision has been made. Today's participants on panel are the following. I am Don Cook, I am the chair. On the left is Mr. John Clausen, member, and member Sarah Marsh is in the middle. Secretary Treasurer Nancy Bizzato, and Assistant Secretary Treasurer is Holly Wilford. She will be acting as our programmer. We have Mr. Curtis Thompson, who's a member of the Planning Department, and Engineering Manager Derek Young. Ms. Wilford, hang on a second. Pecuniary interest. Does any member of this panel have pecuniary interest in accordance with the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act in any of the applications being considered at this hearing? Sandra Marsh?
No.
Mr. Clausen? You can speak. And I have none. Ms. Wilford, are there any requests for withdrawal or adjournment?
Through you, Mr. Chair, no, there is not.
Okay. So the first file we have, on our application is file A9, 2020, 7 John Street. Holly, would you please go through with the planning summary?
Yes, we will. We're just about to share our screen, so you should be able to see our presentation. Committee of Adjustment hearing, Tuesday, June 30th, 2020, 4 p.m. Zoom. All Town of Pelham in-person Committee of Adjustment hearings have been canceled. Instead, the town is holding all Committee of Adjustment hearings electronically via Zoom. Please note, no decisions have been made prior to this public meeting. This presentation is based upon the Town of Pelham's Planning Department report and analysis. All comments received from commenting agencies and the public have been forwarded in full to the Committee of Adjustment members for their consideration. Participants are reminded: ensure your background is free from offensive or vulgar material. If inappropriate material is visible, you will be removed from the meeting. Vulgar or offensive language will not be tolerated. If inappropriate language is used, you will be removed from the meeting. Participants' microphones and video cameras will remain off until they are called to speak. Once your comments have been heard by the committee, your microphone will be muted. Once voting on the item has taken place, participants will be removed from the meeting completely. You may resume viewing the meeting via live stream. Decorum. The Committee of Adjustment is a formal public hearing requiring decorum, meaning all comments are to be made through the chair. If you have pre-registered to speak, you will be given an opportunity to address the committee at the public portion of the meeting. If you are live streaming and wish to submit a comment live, please email clerks@pelham.ca. Please note, comments must be received during the public portion of the meeting. Otherwise, they will not be considered. Disrespectful comments will not be tolerated. Cheering, booing, or hissing from the gallery will not be tolerated. Please note, if decorum is lost, the meeting may be recessed and persons will be asked to leave. Application for minor variance. File A9/2020P, 7 John Street. Excerpts from Planning Report. The subject land is located on the north side of John Street, lying west of Stella Street. known locally as 7 John Street in the town of Pelham. The minor variance application requests relief from Section 13.2C, maximum lot coverage, to permit a maximum lot coverage of 36%, whereas 30% is required. Section 13.2D, minimum front yard, to permit a minimum front yard setback of 6 meters, whereas 7.7 meters is required. To date, the following comments have been received. Building Department. Building permits are required. Public Works Department. No comments. Public. No comments. Is the variance minor in nature? Reducing the front yard and increasing the lot coverage are minor in nature, as they will improve the streetscape along John Street by providing more street edge enclosures with the house situated closer to the street. The variances will also allow for a desirable rear yard landscaped amenity area and to maintain while still providing more design flexibility for a larger building footprint. The front yard reduction is considered minor overall, subject to the proposed condition of a satisfactory front elevation plan at building permit. Is the variance desirable for the development or use of the land? Reducing the front yard and increasing the lot coverage are both desirable for the lands, as they will allow for more design flexibility for future residential dwelling with a larger ground floor area, but also maintain a larger rear area amenity space. Does the variance maintain the general intent and purpose of the official plan? Both variances maintain the general purpose and intent of the official plan because they do not compromise the neighborhood's ability to be adequately serviced, maintain land compatibility, while also improving the streetscape and urban design of John Street. Does the variance maintain the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw? Both variances maintain the general intent of the zoning bylaw because the dwelling will still allow for adequate drainage and landscaped amenity areas with respect to lot coverage, and maintain a consistent building alignment along John Street while still providing a positive interface between the private and public realm. Planning staff is of the opinion that the proposal applies current planning and development principles dealing with the appropriate infill development, making efficient use of the designed urban area lands, providing design flexibility where suitable to do so. The proposed minor variance should not negatively impact the surrounding neighborhood. In planning staff's opinion, the application is consistent with the provincial policy statement and conforms to the provincial, regional, and local plans. Planning staff recommend that application A9/2020P be approved subject to the following conditions. The following conditions are suggested: that the applicant submit building permits. Building permits are required to the satisfaction of the chief building officer, and at the time of building permit, provide a south front elevation plan that positively contributes to the public street through the use of the front porch, windows symmetrically proportioned to the building's mass, and a congruent use of exterior clad, etc., to the satisfaction of the Director of Community Planning and Development. Next slide. If you wish to receive a copy of the Notice of Decision, please contact the Secretary-Treasurer in writing as soon as possible. Nancy Bozzato, Secretary-Treasurer, Committee of Adjustment, 20 Pelham Town Square, P.O. Box 400, Fawn Hill, Ontario, LOS 1C0, njbozzato@pelham.ca. This contact information can also be found on the Town of Pelham's website. At this moment, Mr. Chair, we have brought in the applicant, Mr. Duffy, and his agent, Mr. Craig Rowe.
Mr. Duffy, do you have any comments to make to help us decide on your application?
No, I have no comment.
Mr. Rowe?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I just have a brief presentation, pretty good summary by staff, but just to kind of run through what the intent of the application is, if I may.
Go right ahead, sir.
Thank you. Yeah, we can just, there we go, perfect. So our subject lands are located at 7 John Street, just to the east of South Pelham Road. So we're about 0.62 hectares. We have 24 meters of frontage along John Street. Currently, the lands are sitting vacant, and the proposed use is for a single detached dwelling. If you could, next slide, thanks. So you may recall seeing this property before. It was previously 7 John Street, as well as the lot next to it were severed from 36 Stella Street through applications B3 2019P and B4 2019P. There was a concurrent minor variance pursued for that lot that was going to be created, which reduced the overall lot area from 700 square meters to 625 square meters. Our current application is for a reduced front yard setback of 6 meters, where 7.7 is required. This is largely to help kind of place the dwelling, and with the sweeping fashion of John Street, allows it to flow with the lot line as opposed to sitting very close in one part and recessed in the other. And also increasing our maximum lot coverage of 36%, where 30 is required. And this is largely due to the provision of a covered deck and a covered porch, which count as lot coverage. And the reason for these variances is that Mr. Duffy has now completed his house design for 7 John Street, and we've just identified these deficiencies that we feel are minor in nature. Thanks. So that would be, you can see the plane there of where 6 meters is as opposed to the 7.7 meters sitting behind it. A little bit of augmentation in the front of the dwelling there, and that's where that covered porch is. And then again, the lot coverage would be the other item. Okay, so there's our typical foretest of a minor variance. Secretary, if you could just forward that on. One slide, thank you. So they're in the urban living area of the town of Pelham. These areas are allowed to be developed with single detached dwellings, which is what the permitted use is on the property and what's being proposed by Mr. Duffy. And this is consistent with the neighborhood in general. We have an R1 zoning in place, which allows for that single detached dwelling. Namely, as I pointed out, the front yard setback cannot be met based on the preferred housing design. The way that the front porch has been set up on the dwelling and having that relationship with the street, we feel is desirable from an aesthetic perspective and helps better integrate the property with John Street. As I mentioned about the lot coverage, really we're allowing for these additional elements of a covered deck and a covered porch, which are keeping with kind of traditional homes that we see out there with a nice covered porch on the front. So we feel it's a good design element and a worthwhile variance to undertake. There's no relief requested for any setbacks that would have an impact on any adjacent development. Is it development desirable or appropriate with the land, building, or structure? The massing that's being proposed is generally consistent with other dwellings within the neighborhood. Those reductions in setback and the expansion of the allowable coverage is getting us to a nice compatible built form with opportunities for good design, that interaction with the street. And again, we're not facilitating any reduced setbacks for any other yards associated with the property. In terms of it being minor in nature, the visual impact of coming that 1.7 meters closer, we consider to be negligible. Really, the increase in coverage is 37 square meters, and the bulk of this is indeed the covered porches in the front and the back. The back porch will not be seen from the street, and the front augments well with the front. We feel it's keeping with the traditional character of the neighborhood, being some of those older homes, and that no neighboring properties are going to be negatively impacted by this application. So we're of the position that the requested variances are indeed satisfying the foretest of the Planning Act, which is also echoed in the staff report. We're increasing the mass of the dwelling slightly, but we're projecting it towards John Street, which is going to give us better opportunities for good architectural design. And we have no objection to the recommendation of submitting that architectural drawing to show how that relationship will work. And generally, at the end of the day, we're going to end up with a home which is very consistent with everything else in the neighborhood.
Thank you, Mr. Rowe. I would like to make one comment. I am very happy to see that Mr. Duffy is maintaining the 7.0 meter setback from the property line to the front of the garage door. At least it'll give that an opportunity for somebody to park a car in the driveway. Committee members, do you have any comments you wish to make or any questions you may wish to ask Mr. Duffy or Mr. Rowe?
Through you, Mr. Chair, would you mind if we just opened up to the public comment portion first?
Yes, we can do that.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, we will open up the public comment portion. We did not receive any pre-registrations from the public. I will now check the clerks@pelham.ca email to see if we've received any comments from those at home. It is 4:15 p.m. and I have not received any emails at clerks@pelham.ca, and that can close the public portion. And through you, Mr. Chair, the committee may now start their deliberations.
Thank you, Ms. Wilford. Do any members of the committee have any comments to make to Mr. Rowe or Mr. Duffy at this time? Seeing no comments, are we in a position to have a motion?
Mr. Chair, it's Nancy. I see that member Clausen was trying to make a comment. However, he was on mute.
Mr. Clausen.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, for Mr. Rowe, there's a bell easement there. Does that, your design in that, has they looked at the bell easement? There's no interference there?
No, through Mr. Chair, no, there's no interference there. That was all dealt with through the registration of the lots this past year.
That's all.
Are there any other comments from the committee? Are we ready to make a decision? If so, can I have a mover and a seconder?
I will move that the motion be granted.
I second it.
We have to have the reasons and all that.
Yes.
And conditions. The motion be granted subject to?
Subject to the following, the application be granted for the following reasons. That the variance is minor in nature, given as it improves the streetscape and appearance of John Street. The intent of the zoning bylaw is maintained. The intent of the official plan is maintained. The purpose is desirable for the land as it allows for flexibility in the design. This application is granted without prejudice to any other application in the town of Pelham. No objections were received, and the Committee of Adjustment considered the written and oral comments and agrees with the minor variance report analysis and recommendation that this application meet the Planning Act test for the minor variance on the following conditions: that prior to the building permit being issued, that front elevation plans be submitted to the satisfaction of the Director of Community and Development, and that building permits be submitted to the satisfaction of the Chief Building Official.
Thank you very much. I'll call the vote. All in favor? Carried. Thank you very much, gentlemen. This closes the application A9 2020.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Greg. We will continue. The next application under consideration is minor variance application A11 2020P 875 River Road. Ms. Wilford, can you please start us read the planning summary?
The applicant is just joining. Sure. Just one moment for us to allow the applicant to join and put up our PowerPoint for those viewing at home to see. Participants are reminded: ensure your background is free from offensive or vulgar material. If inappropriate material is visible, you will be removed from the meeting. Vulgar or offensive language will not be tolerated. If inappropriate language is used, you will be removed from the meeting. Participants' microphones and video cameras will remain off until they are called to speak. Once your comments have been heard by the committee, your microphone will be muted. Once voting on the item has taken place, participants will be removed from the meeting completely. You may resume viewing the meeting via live stream. Decorum. The Committee of Adjustment is a formal public hearing requiring decorum, meaning all comments are to be made through the chair. If you have pre-registered to speak, you will be given an opportunity to address the committee at the public portion of the meeting. If you are live streaming and wish to submit a comment live, please email clerks@pelham.ca. Please note, comments must be received during the public portion of the meeting, otherwise they will not be considered. Disrespectful comments will not be tolerated. Cheering, booing, or hissing from the gallery will not be tolerated. Please note, if decorum is lost, the meeting may be recessed and persons will be asked to leave. Application for minor variance. File A11/2020P, 875 River Road. Excerpts from Planning Report. The subject land is located on the north side of River Road, lying east of Far Street, known locally as 875 River Road in the town of Pelham. The minor variance application requests relief from Section 7.7A, maximum accessory lot coverage, to permit a maximum accessory lot coverage of 4%, whereas 1% is required. Section 7.7D, maximum accessory building height, to permit a maximum building height of 5.2 meters, whereas 3.7 meters is required. To date, the following comments have been received. Niagara Region Planning and Development, Stage 1 to 2 Archaeological Assessment and Ministry Clearance, and no objections provided plumbing or living space is not included within the proposed garage. Building Department, building permits are required. Public Works Department, no comments. Public, no comments. Planning Department, please note an additional memo from the Planning Department was received on June 26, 2020, advising town planning staff would like to remove the requested condition for the Stage 1 to 2 archaeological assessment and ministry clearance due to ground disturbance associated with the recent new home construction and private septic system installation. Town planning staff are comfortable waiving the requested condition as the site likely has been considerably disturbed. Is the variance minor in nature? The variance to increase accessory building lot coverage to 4% is minor overall. Adequate land area remains available to handle stormwater runoff, the existing septic system, and preserve a rear yard amenity area. Increasing the accessory building height to 5.2 meters is minor given the rural context. No negative impacts are anticipated by the adjacent neighbors as adequate distance separates the nearest residential neighborhood from the building site. Is the variance desirable for the development or use of the land? Increasing the accessory building lot coverage is desirable for the land because it will allow for enhanced use of the rural residential property, which is relatively small in size and constrained for an agricultural area and traditional farming operation. The variance request to increase the accessory building height is desirable for the property as it allows for enhanced storage and use of the facility. No adverse impacts are anticipated on the surrounding lands. Does the variance maintain the general intent and purpose of the official plan? The proposed use of the building accessory to a single detached house is permitted in the good general agricultural designation of the official plan, and the policy does permit uses which are compatible with agriculture. Given the proposed location of the accessory building, the requested increase in building height will not compromise the objective of the official plan. The variances are appropriate given the site's rural context and meet the general intent of the town's official plan policies. Does the variance maintain the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw? The size of the proposed accessory building height to 5.2 meters and increased lot coverage to 4% is appropriate given the rural context. Reasonable amounts of open space remain available on the site for amenity area, stormwater runoff, and sewage system purposes. Thus, the increased height and lot coverage will not adversely impact the rural character of the area or the surrounding countryside. In planning staff's opinion, the application is consistent with provincial policy statements and conforms to the provincial, regional, and local plans. Planning staff recommends that application A11/2020P be approved. The following conditions are suggested: that building permits are required to the satisfaction of the chief building officer with no living space or plumbing being approved, and a stage 1 to 2 archaeological assessment and clearance from the ministry. Please note, planning staff are no longer supportive of this condition and have recommended it be removed. If you wish to receive a copy of the notice of decision, please contact the Secretary Treasurer in writing as soon as possible. Nancy Bizzato, Secretary Treasurer of Committee of Adjustment, 20 Pelham Town Square, P.O. Box 400 Fonthill, Ontario, LOS 1C0, NJ Bizzato at pelham.ca. This contact information can also be found on the Town of Pelham's website. Through you, Mr. Chair, at this point in time, we are bringing the applicant into the meeting room. Oh, I see that he is there.
I'm here.
Thank you, Mr. Van Tool, is it? How do you pronounce it?
Yes, Van Tool.
Van Tool. Thank you for joining our meeting. Do you have any comments that you would like to make in support of your application to help us make a decision?
Nothing specific to add right now. Just thank the committee for their time and look forward to any questions you may have.
Thank you. Ms. Wilford, are there any pre-registered participants wishing to speak on this application as part of our Zoom meeting?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we have not received any pre-registered public participants. I will check the clerks at pelham.ca website to see if we've received any comments from the public viewing at home. It is now 4:26, and I see that we have not received any emails to clerks at pelham.ca. Therefore, we can close the public portion of the meeting.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Members of the committee, do you have any questions you wish to ask Mr. Van Tool? Ms. Marsh.
I just have a question as to what the general purpose is of the new building and why the increased height is required.
Yes, the building is just garage for vehicle parking and storage, hobby type work. The height is to allow it to have a height and a size, or a height and a design that will match and look best beside our house.
Thank you. And just confirming that there will be no living space in addition or no plumbing in that new build.
No living spaces and no plumbing.
Thank you.
Mr. Clausen, any questions?
No, I don't, Mr. Cook.
Mr. Van Tool, I did a little quick calculation myself, and I'm finding that it's possible that the peak of your roof is going to be about 33 feet above grade. Is this compatible with the adjacent homes? I have a hard time when I was out and had a look, and I'm thinking the adjacent homes don't seem to have that high a peak unless my...
Yeah, I don't have the exact calculation of the total height with me, but it is planned to be lower than my house, and my neighbor's house is tall. The closest neighbor to the shop is taller. Their house is taller than my house.
Okay, thank you very much. Members of the committee, are we ready to render a decision on this application? If so, can I have a mover and a seconder?
I'll move that the minor variance be granted.
I will second.
Okay. And the application for lot coverage and accessory height, yes, granted. And reasons, the variance is minor in nature given the rural location, and there's lots of open land for the remaining stormwater to run off. The intent of the zoning bylaw is maintained, intent of the official plan is maintained. The proposal is desirable for the land, allows for the more use of the property, and that we grant the application without prejudice to any other application in the town of Pelham. There were no objections received. Committee of Adjustments considered the written and oral comments and agrees with the minor variance report analysis and recommendation that the application meets the Planning Act test for the minor variance. Now the conditions. With the planning staff not requiring the architectural assessment, I would recommend that we don't have to issue that as a condition, and the only condition that we should have is that the owner applies for building permits to the satisfaction of the chief building official, and that there's no plumbing and no living space in the new building. So moved.
Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Ms. Marsh. All in favor of granting the application? Carried. Thank you very much, Mr. Van Tool. You're all set to put together your building permit application.
Thank
With
you.
that, I declare this part of the meeting, A11-220, over with. We're moving on to the next application. As soon as I find it. Committee members, we have a series of applications on Summerside's Boulevard. I would, having looked them over, I would think we could probably deal with applications A12, A13, and A14 to 220 concurrently. Does that seem reasonable?
Well, yeah, that's the ones where we're just talking about the setbacks.
Okay, so we're going to look at applications A12, 13, and 14 concurrently. And Ms. Wilford, would you please read the planning summary report?
Certainly, we're just getting the report up to share our screen so that those viewing at home would be able to see as well. Just give us one moment. You can try to reopen it. It's up at the top. I have it saved on your desktop. Just give me one moment. We're just having a slight technical difficulty.
We can wait, I'm sure.
Yeah.
My apologies, Mr. Chair. It looks like we are back and running. Okay, participants are reminded. Ensure your background is free from offensive or vulgar material. If inappropriate material is visible, you will be removed from the meeting. Vulgar or offensive language will not be tolerated. If inappropriate language is used, you will be removed from the meeting. Participant microphones and video cameras will remain off until they are called to speak. Once your comments have been heard by the committee, your microphones will be muted. Once voting on an item has taken place, participants will be removed from the meeting completely. You can resume viewing the meeting via live stream. Decorum. The Committee of Adjustment is a formal public hearing requiring decorum, meaning all comments are to be made through the chair. If you have pre-registered to speak, you will be given an opportunity to address the committee at the public portion of the meeting. If you are live streaming and wish to submit a comment live, please email clerks@pelham.ca. Please note, comments must be received during the public portion of the meeting, otherwise they will not be considered. Disrespectful comments will not be tolerated. Cheering, booing, or hissing from the gallery will not be tolerated. Please note, if decorum is lost, the meeting may be recessed and persons will be asked to leave. Applications for minor variance. Summerside's Boulevard. For presentation purposes only, the following applications will be presented as a group as they are fundamentally the same. A12/2020P to A14/2020P, A15/2020P, A16/2020P to A17/2020P. Applications for minor variance. Files A12 to A14/2020P Summersides Boulevard. Excerpts from Planning Report. The subject lands are A12/2020P 42 to 48 Summersides Boulevard. A13/2020P 50 to 56 Summersides Boulevard. A14/2020P 58 to 64 Summersides Boulevard. The minor variance applications request relief from Bylaw Number 4041/2018, Section 2, RM1, 287, Section 6, General Provisions C, Garage Setbacks, to remove the shared masonry wall requirement in favor of an approved Ontario Building Code detail. Bylaw Number 4041/2018, Section 2, RM1, 287, Section 6, General Provisions C, Garage Setbacks, seeking a minimum interior side yard setback of 1.5 meters on the other side, whereas 2.4 meters is required. Section 6.1D, maximum accessory lot coverage, seeking 13% for 44 and 46 Summerside Boulevards, whereas 10% is required. Seeking 13% for 52 and 54 Summersides Boulevard, whereas 10% is required. Seeking 13% for 60 and 62 Summersides Boulevard, whereas 10% is required. To date, the following comments have been received. Building Department. Mutual garages must have an alternate firewall as per the Ontario Building Code. Individual building permits are required for each townhouse unit and detached garage. Public Works Department. Requesting a comprehensive overall lot grading plan for the entire block be required to the satisfaction of the Director of Public Works. Public, no comments. Is the variance minor in nature? The variance is minor overall, as the Ontario Building Code best regulates these matters. Increasing lot coverage to 13% is minor overall, as adequate land area remains available for rear yard amenity space. Adequate landscaped open space is also available for stormwater management purposes. Reducing the interior side yard setback to 1.5 meters for the detached garage is minor overall, as these lands have been designated to sheet flow southbound towards Tokler Lane into the storm sewer system. Town engineering staff are concerned that the concentrated drainage caused by extended garage walls interfering with the sheet flow may cause rear yard flooding. Therefore, a grading plan is requested as a condition of approval to satisfy this concern prior to building permit. Is the variance desirable for the development or use of the land? The request to remove the shared masonry wall provision is desirable for the lands because it already is all regulated by the Ontario Building Code, and it will allow for more construction design flexibility. Increasing lot coverage to 13% is desirable for the land, as it will allow the construction of double-car garages for each townhouse unit without eliminating the desired rear yard amenity space. Reducing the interior side yard setback to 1.5 meters for the detached garages should not negatively impact the overland drainage of the subject lands through rear yard flooding caused by the proposed wall extension, pending the submission of an overall lot drainage plan as a condition of approval. Does the variance maintain the general intent and purpose of the official plan? Removing the shared masonry wall provision maintains the general policy intent for the official plan because wall construction details are regulated by the Ontario Building Code, and there are no obvious negative impacts anticipated with its removal. Increasing the lot coverage maintains the general policy intent of the official plan because access continues to be provided via the rear laneway, adequate amenity space remains, and the increased lot coverage proposed by itself will not adversely impact the drainage capabilities of the subject land. Town staff are of the opinion the reduced side yard setback will not compromise the general intent of the official plan, subject to the grading plan being approved to the satisfaction of the Director of Public Works. Does the variance maintain the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw? Removing the shared masonry wall provision does not compromise the ability to comply with the Ontario Building Code because there are several acceptable wall construction details available to the builder under the code, and the zoning bylaw still continued to allow for mutual, aka zero lot line detached garages as was originally intended. Increasing the lot coverage maintains the general intent of the zoning bylaw because ample parking stalls are provided off the rear laneway, adequate amenity space remains, and the increased lot coverage proposed by itself will not adversely impact the drainage capabilities of the subject land. The intent of the 2.4 meter interior side yard setback for detached garages is actually to allow for the parking stalls beside the detached garage structures. Planning staff are of the opinion this request does maintain the intent and purpose of the site-specific zoning bylaw. Planning staff are of the opinion that the proposal applies current planning and development principles dealing with appropriate greenfield development, making efficient use of the designated urban area lands, providing design flexibility where suitable to do so. In planning staff's opinion, the applications are consistent with provincial policy statement and conforms with the provincial, regional, and local plans. Planning staff recommend that application numbers A12/2020P, A13/2020P, and A14/2020P be approved subject to the following conditions. That prior to the issuance of building permit, submit a comprehensive overall lot grading plan of Block 45, Plan 59M 471 for approval to the satisfaction of the Director of Public Works.
Thank you, Ms. Wilford. Mr. Gagnon, I understand you've joined our meeting. Do you have any comments you wish to make regarding these three applications?
I have a PowerPoint presentation. I'm not sure whether you'd want me to go through it all. The staff recommendation and the staff report is very thorough. Maybe what I would do is just highlight a couple of these points. If we could look at slide number 2. It's the 3 blocks shown there, 44, 45, and 46. The third slide. This shows what the area secondary plan in the subdivision was designed to implement, where we have units fronting onto Summerside Boulevard, but there will be no driveways from Summerside Boulevard. It's meant to be a green street frontage with very limited parking along the street provided by those 2 little lay-by spots you see in front of blocks 43 to 46. There will be backyards behind the units, and then there'll be double garages for each unit, and each unit will also have a double parking space in the driveway that will be accessible from the rear laneway. So the idea along here is to keep that nice civic streetscape between the community center and the downtown, a nice landscape boulevard, free of vehicles, as all you will see there are the fronts of the units and front landscape yards, with all the cars and vehicles hidden in the back. The most principal variance that we were asking for is for between the separated garages. And the intent there is to avoid, if we maybe skip down to slide number, let's see, where is it there? Slide number 9. If you could go to there. Thank you. If we didn't have these variances, this is what the design ends up being. We want to provide those double garages with the double car driveways behind. We want to provide lots of space for people to park, double garages for people to put their items in. And by doing that, by having the 2.45 plus 2.45 meter setback, you see that we would have angled lot lines dividing unit 60 A and B and unit C and D. And what these variances allow us to do is have the lot line straight and still provide enough space to get between the garages, plus a swale in between the garages to collect the drainage from the backyards. Planning staff are recommending approval of these variances, and the Public Works Department is looking for the overall lot grading plan, which is very typical. We've got a lot grading plan drafted up by Upper Canada Consultants, and their engineers provided a certificate saying that the drainage that's shown complies with the overall grading plan of the area subdivision. And also we will be working with the Public Works Department to make sure that they're totally satisfied with the grading and drainage. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to respond.
Thank you, Mr. Gagnon. Holly, have we had any registered participants wishing to speak on these applications?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Through you, Mr. Chair, no, we have not, and I will just check the clerks@pelham.ca email to see if we've received any comments from people at home. It is 4:46, and we have not received any comments on the email, so we can close the public comment portion of the meeting.
Thank you, Holly. Members of the committee, do you have any questions you wish to ask of Mr. Gagnon? Mrs. Marsh.
I have a comment and a question. I really like the design of these townhouses. It does bring the cars off the street and puts them in the driveway. I have a question as to the overall design. Are the townhouses themselves freehold or condominium? And the laneway, will that be a condominium or a freehold?
Okay, it's designed as freehold. The subdivision was designed with a public laneway behind, which is owned by the town, and the town will be maintaining it, just the same as they would the public road or public highway. And so these units are all freehold. They're owned individually by the individual lot owners or unit owners, and they have access from the laneway only for vehicles, and pedestrians can enter the front of the dwellings from the street, but all vehicular access is from the public laneway in the back. So all the cars and parking areas and garages will be out of sight in the backyards.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Clausen, do you have any questions of Mr. Gagnon?
I just wondering, the concrete block wall, I mean, why is that an issue that you want to remove it?
Right. The zoning bylaw included that in as a sort of a cautionary measure to make sure that anybody that would be looking at building attached garages would have a firewall in between. And I guess when they wrote the bylaw, they included it as masonry, but under the building code, there's several types of firewalls that you can put between garages or put between housing units. For instance, the housing units have firewalls in them, the same as the garages will. And there's 2 or 3 different options under the building code, and that's something that's monitored by the building inspector to make sure that it complies with the code and is fire safe. The fire chief commented on our previous application on block 43, which we made a while back, and he noted that he was happy with other versions of the firewall as well.
Thank you, Mr. Gagnon. I have a question for Mr. Thompson. If we could have him join the meeting. Curtis, one of the things that gets me is I understand from Mr. Gagnon's comments that Tokar Lane is going to become a public highway or a public laneway. Is that correct?
Yeah.
What is the width of Tokar Lane? I like the design you're coming up with, Mr. Gagnon. I like the provision of the parking, your double garages, double asphalt pads behind them. I'm just worried from my own personal point of view, being an old parking guy, that I don't want to see Tokar Lane becoming a parking lot. Will it, as part of the subdividers agreement, was it considered that this would be signed as no parking?
For you, Chair. Yeah, the Toker Lane and all the future public lanes in the town in East Fonthill, I believe, are all going to be designated fire routes. I'm not too sure, but I know it's definitely going to be no parking. I'm not sure what the paved width is off the top of my head. I mean, it's part of the subdivision plan, which has already been approved. But I know the road allowance for the public laneway in this area is 7.5 meters. And the laneways, the whole intent and history behind laneways is that it is an area where all the unsightly things usually happen. So where all the cars park, where garbage is supposed to get picked up. So that's basically why it's there. So it's not technically a parking lot, but it is where everyone will be accessing their parking areas.
Okay, thank you very much. I just wondered if there was a provision in your parking bylaw that might be invoked rather than doing it under a fire lane. Not to worry. Thank you very much. Are there any other comments from the committee? Mr. Gagne, sir.
Yes, that's a very good question about the width of that laneway. I believe it's 7.5 meters. For instance, if you consider a condominium development, a condominium driveway system, that private driveway system, this is the same width as that would be in a condominium driveway system. So there's lots of room for two cars to pass in that laneway. And there's also proper turning radiuses for cars to turn in and out of the driveways without any difficulty. And all that's been taken into account with the original subdivision design.
You know, the whole thing is that when you have something that has a platform width of 20 feet, people think they can park on it, and all of a sudden you're down to having a passable area that's only 10 feet wide. And this is, to me, this is a bit of a safety issue, but that's something that I'm sure has been looked at by our planners in developing and approving the plan of subdivision. Yes, Mr. Gagne.
Yes, that is precisely the reason why we wanted to design double car garages with double driveways. Wanted to make sure there's ample space to keep cars off of that laneway so that they could be in the driveway or in the garage. That was the whole idea. Really.
Thank you very much. I'm also glad to see that we haven't really narrowed down the widths between the buildings. I really do believe that is going to end up being where most of the drainage is going to end up going out to Tokar Lane. I just hope that the residents that buy these units don't decide to put a fence line down through the middle of their property, because that's really where the water is going to go. And I'm very happy to see that there is a condition regarding drainage, and that you did include a letter from Upper Canada saying that will be done, and I'm sure the town staff will be looking at that very closely. With that being said, are there any other comments from the committee? Yes, Mr. Clausen.
If that laneway, from what I see, you can't have any parking on it, and you're going to have problems with people wanting to back out in it. And my question is, there must be a visitor's parking area somewhere close by so that when people do get company, they have a place to park. Am I right? Is that correct?
Yes, sir. If we can go back to that, let's see, what slide number, the second or third slide. Are you able to get there? Slide number 3. No, where is there? Yes, that slide there. If you look along the sidewalk, you will see that there's 4 trees in a row there in the boulevard, but beside it there's a white area. Those are lay-by parking spots, which means they're actually off the traveled portion of Summerside's Boulevard that would be heading east. And that's where spaces where the public can park. And also, that's also another reason why we wanted to make sure there was double car driveways for each unit in the backyard as well. So working with planning staff, that is the theory that's been evolved, that to be some visitors parking along the street, and still enough parking spaces in the driveway behind. We're hoping it all works well.
Thank you, Mr. Garnier. Does that help you, Mr. Clausen?
Yeah, just from a design point, if you want to keep green space and keep Somerset, what you want is no cars parked in front of anybody's place and keep it all green. I go to a place in the US that has on the main roads no parking of any kind, no driveways. And I thought, well, he's given a presentation, that's what he was going for. And then I see, no, there's a compromise there. Fine.
That was a design that was included in the actual subdivision agreement. We're the builders on this particular project. We weren't the developers. The developer was River Realty. They worked with the town on the subdivision design. That was sort of provided for us. We came along and bought the lots, and we have to live with the provisions that were provided in the subdivision agreement.
Okay, fine. That answers the question there.
Once again, Mr. Thompson, seeing that visitor parking is going to be on Summersides, are there going to be any time limitations or signage that says visitor parking only, or you know, there aren't a lot of parking spots in those lay-by areas considering the number of units that are going in. But that's something that the town may have to deal with at a later date. With all that being said, committee members, are we ready to render a decision on these three applications? If so, can I have a mover and a seconder?
I move that the application for minor variance for the removal of the shared masonry wall to allow for an alternative firewall, side yard setback for a detached garage to 1.5 meters, garage coverage of 13% be granted for the following reasons. The variance is minor in nature, given as the Ontario Building Code regulates these matters. Stormwater and sewers have been addressed and should not negatively affect the lands. There's sufficient amenity and open space areas. The intent of the zoning bylaws maintained. The intent of the official plan is maintained. The proposal is desirable for the land as it has more flexibility and allows for double car garages to be built. This application is granted without prejudice to any other application in the town of Pelham. No objections were received, and the Committee of Adjustment considered all written and oral comments and agrees with the minor variance report analysis and recommendation that this application meet the Planning Act test for minor variance with the following condition. Prior to building permits being issued, that an overall lot grading plan must be submitted for and approved to the satisfaction of the Director of Public Works.
Now a second. Yeah, I second.
I see that. Thank you, Mr. Clausen. I would like to make one minor amendment. I noticed that we're actually asking for lot drainage plans for each block, which would be for A12 block 46, A13 block 45, and A14 block 44. I would request it be like an overall covering all the blocks fronting on Summersides Boulevard, just so that when the town's engineering staff have a chance to look at this, they're looking at the overall picture rather than just one block at a time. It's just a minor thing, and I'm sure Mr. Gagnon can have Upper Canada look at that. Mr. Gagnon, would you agree to that type of a add-on to the condition?
Yes, we don't consider that to be an issue because they'll be looking at that throughout the whole area because this whole streetscape is being designed as one development, and they're not being looked at individually, so it'll be a comprehensive design.
Thank you, Mr. Gagnon. Ms. Wilford, maybe Mrs. Marsh, would you accept that as an amendment to your condition?
Yes, I do.
Ms. Wilford, can we make sure that happens? Without that being said, are we ready to render a decision? All in favor? Carried. Thank you. That ends the session for files A12, 13, and 14, 2020. 4248 Summersides Boulevard, 5056 Summersides, and 5864 Summersides. With that, we will move on to application A15-220, being an application for minor variance, 78 to 80 Summersides Boulevard, in the town of Pelham, Block 41, registered plan 59M471. Ms. Wilford, can we proceed with the reading of the planning report summary?
Yes.
Or do we have that here?
Application for minor variance, file A15/2020P, Summersides Boulevard. Excerpts from planning report. The subject lands are located at 78 to 80 Summersides Boulevard. The minor variance application requests relief from Section 5.54I, definition of street townhouse dwelling, to permit a group of not less than 2 dwelling units, whereas not less than 3 dwelling units are required. Section 16.3G, minimum rear yard, to permit a minimum rear yard setback of 6 meters, whereas 7.5 meters is required. Bylaw number 4041, 2018, Section 2, RM1-287D, minimum front yard, to permit a minimum front yard setback of 3 meters, whereas 4.5 meters is required. To date, the following comments have been received. Building Department. Building permits are required. Public Works Department. Requesting a comprehensive overall lot grading plan for the entire block be required to the satisfaction of the Director of Public Works. All downspouts are discharged to Tokler Lane. Public, no comments. Is the variance minor in nature? The request to reduce the minimum number of attached street townhouse dwellings from 3 units to 2 units is minor overall, as the subdivision plan had already conceptually illustrated a 2-unit lot fabric on Block 41. Reducing the front yard and rear yard setbacks are minor in nature, as they will improve the streetscape along Summersides Boulevard, increasing comfort for pedestrians, and allow for the usable rear yard amenity area, subject to an adequate overall lot grading plan be submitted. Is the variance desirable for the development or use of the land? Allowing a 2-unit semi-detached dwelling continues to be desirable for the subject lands. Reducing the front yard and rear yard setbacks are desirable for the lands, as they will allow more design flexibility for 1-story dwellings with larger gross floor areas, but also maintaining adequate rear yard amenity areas. Does the variance maintain the general intent and purpose of the official plan? Allowing a 2-unit semi-detached dwelling does not compromise the official plan's policy intent to maintain high-quality urban design and uphold the minimum required greenfield densities. Town staff are of the opinion the reduced front and rear yard setbacks will not compromise the general intent of the official plan, subject to the grading plan being approved to the satisfaction of the Director of Public Works. Does the variance maintain the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw? Allowing a 2-unit semi-detached dwelling maintains the general intent of the zoning bylaw because similarly, the definition for block townhouse dwelling includes 2-unit semi-detached dwellings. Reducing the front yard and rear yard setbacks maintains the general intent of the zoning bylaw because the dwelling will still be built to directed frontly of Summersides Boulevard. Planning staff is of the opinion that the proposal applies current planning and development principles dealing with appropriate greenfield development, making efficient use of the designated urban area lands, providing design flexibility where suitable to do so. In planning staff's opinion, the applications are consistent with the provincial policy statement and conforms to the provincial, regional, and local plans. Planning staff recommend that application numbers A15/2020P be approved subject to the following condition. That, prior to the issuance of a building permit, submit a comprehensive overall lot grading plan of Block 41, Plan 59M471 for approval to the satisfaction of the Director of Public Works.
Thank you, Ms. Wilford. Mr. Gagne, do you have any comments you wish to add to the planning report presentation?
Yes, I just thought I would point out a few things. if you think the west side variances were complicated and kind of difficult to grasp, the east side of the roundabout is where we ran into actually more difficulty because the western blocks are 45 meters deep and the eastern blocks, due to a number of things, are only 29 and 30 meters deep. So what we had to do on this side of the street is design units that are a little closer to the street, and that caused some variances because of the shallow lot depth. We wanted to get the units facing the street with nice landscape front yards, and we wanted to attach these are bungalows aimed more at empty nester style customers, and they would have an attached garage in the back. And in this case, because the garages are attached to the main building, we don't have that firewall issue on this particular side. But we also had to get some space in the backyard for the double car. So we've got a bungalow unit with a single car garage, but we're also providing a double car driveway in front of it. Again, that's our way of providing as many parking spaces as we can off the street. With regards to the definition of townhouse dwelling, which is 3 or more adjoined units, the issue on this particular block number 41, when it was designed, it was probably intended that there would be 3 units there, but with the space provided, we couldn't figure out a way to get 3 units in there. So we thought it would make sense to apply to the Committee of Adjustment for an interpretation of 2-unit dwelling to also be considered as a townhouse. And our rationale for that is if they're going to be designed, it's designed as a townhouse. And then again, that whole streetscape is designed to look the same. So if you go to the very last slide, which is slide number 9, that's a rendering of the semi-detached unit, number 9. That's near the very end. Oh, that's the previous. Is that the previous one? Yeah, that's we need to go to the second PowerPoint. Right, if you go to slide number 9, that is the rendering of the bungalow units. It looks like a townhouse. The townhouse units to the east will be the same, except there'll be 3 units within it. So that whole streetscape will have that appearance in it as you look at it along the street. So those are the reasons for the variances, and we're hoping that you can agree with what we're proposing there. I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Chair, you're muted right now. Mr. Chair, we are trying to unmute you. You are speaking, but we cannot hear you. I think maybe you're unmuted now. Oh, I think you muted yourself again, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Oh, now you're good, Mr. Chair.
Oh, my goodness. Okay. Technology. Thank you, Mr. Gagnon. Holly, have there been any participants pre-registered participants wishing to speak on this application?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we did not receive any pre-registered members of the public to speak. I will just check the clerks@pelham.ca email address now to see if we've received any emails in. It is 5:09 and I have not received any emails from the public, and therefore we can close the public portion of the meeting. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Wilford. Members of the committee, do you have any questions of Mr. Gagnon on this application? Mr. Clausen.
You're putting the townhouse, you're having 2 units. is instead of 3, you said you couldn't get 3. Is that because you have a certain floor area you require for your design?
It's mostly to do with the size and configuration of that particular block. Because it fans around the corner, it's a reverse pie. You could probably squeeze 3 units on there, but they would be very narrow, and we would have issues with driveways on that inside bend of the road on the internal tow car laneway. So that was the reason. So the 2 units that we're showing there are very similar in size, floor space as all the other units on the street.
Okay, and you're not allowed to go up to 2-story.
Well, what we had planned here is to have 2 stories on the west side of Klager Avenue, and then we would drop down to bungalows on the east side. So we wanted to kind of have uniformity where we have all the 2-story on the west side of the plan and all bungalows on the east side. And that was the particular reason why we ended up with the variances.
Okay, fine, thank you.
Are there any other questions of the committee to Mr. Gagnon? Mr. Gagnon, do you have any more comments to support your application?
Not actually. I think, again, we're going to be working with public works staff to make sure that we've got a proper drainage plan, and everybody will be happy with that at the municipality.
Thank you, Mr. Gagnon. Once again, drainage is a problem, and tow car lane being tow car lane, I hope I'm not anticipating a problem with parking for the town of Pelham on tow car lane, but one never knows. With all that being said, are we ready to render a decision regarding application A15-220, 78 to 80 Summersides Boulevard? Do I have a mover and a seconder?
I move that the application 70-80 Summersides Boulevard, Pelham, for minor variance for the change in street townhouse dwelling, rear yard setback and front yard setback with enclosed porches to be permitted, that this application be granted. And for the following reason, that the variance is minor in nature, given that the subdivision already has contemplated 2 units, and I understand that they've made a thorough investigation of trying to figure out how to design this, that there's some design situations there. They will improve the appearance of the road and will allow for more comfort for pedestrians. That makes sense there. And the intent of the bylaw is maintained. Third, the intent of the official plan is maintained. Fourth, the proposal is desirable for the land as it allows for usable amenity area and allows for flexibility of designs, which I can see is very important. 5, the application is granted without prejudice to any other application in the town of Pelham. 6, we haven't received any objections. 7, the Committee of Adjustments considered the written and oral comments and agrees with the minor variance report analysis and recommendation that this application meets the Planning Act tests for the minor variance. And the condition, I guess, through the chair, I think they have to come with, they are in control of all these properties, so they're going to have to deal with all the properties and make one comprehensive lot grading plan that it suits the Director of Public Works. So, I mean, I guess that's the condition, the way I would word it. It has to be designed in such a way that all the properties work in unison together, because we're not going to design each one individually.
And I agree with that. So are we ready to vote on this? Can I have a show of hands? All those in favor? Oops.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Chair. I did get a mover, but I didn't have a seconder.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor of the motion? Carried. And with that, I will close file A15-220, 7880 Summersides Boulevard, and we'll move on to the next application, which is application, and we're going to do these concurrently, A16 and A17-220. two blocks. The first application, A16, is 84 to 90 Summersides Boulevard. And A17 is 94 to 100. And I may have those reversed, but not to worry. I think we all know what we're dealing with. Ms. Wilford, could you please read the summary of the planning report for us?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Applications for minor variance file A16 to A17, 2020P Summersides Boulevard. Excerpts from planning report. The subject lands are 84 to 90 Summersides Boulevard, 94 to 100 Summersides Boulevard. The minor variance application requests relief from Section 16.3G, minimum rear yard, to permit a minimum rear yard setback of 6 meters, whereas 7.5 meters is required. Bylaw number 4041, 2018, Section 2, RM1-287D, minimum front yard, Section 6.1D, maximum accessory lot coverage, to permit a minimum front yard setback of 3 meters, whereas 4.5 meters is required. To date, the following comments have been received. Building Department. Building permits are required. Public Works Department. Requesting a comprehensive overall lot grading plan for the entire block be required, to the satisfaction of the Director of Public Works. All downspouts shall discharge to Tokler Lane. Public, no comments. Is the variance minor in nature? Reducing the front yard and rear yard setbacks are minor in nature, as they will improve the streetscape along Summersides Boulevard, increase comfort for pedestrians, and allow for a usable rear yard amenity area, subject to an adequate overall lot grading plan be submitted. Is the variance desirable for the land or use? Reducing the front yard and rear yard setbacks are desirable for the lands, as they will allow for more design flexibility for one-story dwelling with larger gross floor areas, but also maintaining adequate rear yard amenity areas. Does the variance maintain the general intent and purpose of the official plan? Town staff are of the opinion the reduced front and rear yard setbacks will not compromise the general intent of the official plan, subject to the grading plan being approved to the satisfaction of the Director of Public Works. Does the variance maintain the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw? Reducing the front yard and rear yard setbacks maintain the general intent of the zoning bylaw because the dwelling will still be built to directly face Summersides. Planning staff is of the opinion that the proposal applies current planning and development principles dealing with appropriate greenfield development, making efficient use of the designated urban area lands, providing design flexibility where suitable to do so. In planning staff's opinion, the applications are consistent with the provincial policy statement and conform to provincial, regional, and local plans. Planning staff recommend that application numbers A16 to A17/2020P be approved subject to the following conditions. That prior to the issuance of building permit, submit a comprehensive overall lot grading plan for Block 45, Plan 59M 471 for approval to the satisfaction of the Director of Public Works. If you wish to receive a copy of the notice of decision for any applications heard, please contact the Secretary-Treasurer in writing as soon as possible. Nancy Bozzato, Secretary-Treasurer, Committee of Adjustment, 20 Pelham Town Square, P.O. Box 400, Fonthill, Ontario, LOS 1C0, NJ Bozzato at pelham.ca. This contact information can also be found on the Town of Pelham's website.
Uh-oh. I have lost my Zoom.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we can still hear and see you.
Well, I guess that's good. I can't see any of you at the moment.
There may be, if you click on the bottom, do you see a little blue and white icon, perhaps? You can click on that and you might be able to see the Zoom meeting.
There.
Hang on a second here. Okay. Mr. Gagne, do you have any comments you wish to make on this, to help us make a decision on this application?
Yeah, I'll try not to be redundant, but again, it's a matter of the lot depth in these particular cases on the east side of Klager Avenue. We're trying to get the proper unit sizes in and again, get proper parking spaces in. and front yard landscaping. So we found the variances important to accomplish all of this. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you. Ms. Wilford, have we any pre-registered participants wishing to speak on this application?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we have not received any pre-registered public participants. I will now check the clerks@pelham.ca email to see if we've received any comments from those watching from home. It is 5:20 and we have not received any emails, and therefore we can close the public portion of the meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Wilford. Members of the committee, are there any questions or comments you wish to make regarding these two applications? Remember, I can't see you, so.
Yeah, I'd like to Mr. Gagnon. I gather from sitting through this, Mr. Gagnon, just to help you out a little here, you were handed a piece of property that River Realty went through all the things about setting up the various parameters for the development. And now you're asked to design buildings and parking area and drainage and whatever. And the criteria is you need a certain size, a certain appearance. People want garages, they want porches and everything else. And because of all these items, that is, it presented some major design problems. And by coming to us and getting minor variance, it gave you the flexibility and the ability to deliver what is asked of you by the developer. Is that correct?
Yes, when applications are made by developers to design subdivisions, they get together with their planning consultants and engineers, together with the city or to the town planners and engineers, and they anticipate all of the design matters to create proper zoning. But even after a lot of planners spending a lot of time with their elbows on the table working these things out, along comes the builder, and when we put our pens to paper and sit down and design, and we're trying to meet the desires of our sales and marketing staff who are talking to the customers that say they want this and that. And then we come along and suddenly we said, gosh, it would help us out if we had some variances. And so planning staff were cooperative with us in recommending approval of these. So that's sort of the story of how it happens.
Fine. Understand it.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just for your benefit, I do not see any of the other committee members wishing to speak.
Once again, I hope I'm there. I think I've got my thing back up. I don't know what I hit, but it seems to be working. Thank you, Mr. Gagnon, for your presentations and your indulgence with us today. With all that being said, are we ready to make a decision on this on these particular applications? Do I have a mover and a seconder? Mrs. March.
I'll make the motion for application for minor variance for the rear yard setback, front yard setback with unenclosed porches to be permitted be granted for the following reasons. The variance is minor in nature, given as it will improve the streetscape of the road and allows for a more usable rear yard amenity area. The intent of the zoning bylaw is maintained. The intent of the official plan is maintained. The proposal is desirable for the land as it allows more flexibility in the design. The application is granted without prejudice to any other application in the town of Pelham. No objections were received, and the Committee of Adjustment considered the written and oral comments and agrees with the minor variance report analysis and recommendation that this application meet the Planning Act test for minor variance with the following condition: that prior to the issuance of any building permits, that a comprehensive overall lot grading plan for the area be submitted for approval to the satisfaction of the Director of Public Works.
Do I have a seconder for that motion?
I seconded it.
Thank you, Mr. Clausen. We are ready to vote. All in favor of the granting of the severances? Carried. Thank you, Mr. Gagnon, for participating, and hopefully we'll see you again. And with that, I think we're just about ready to close off the meeting.
Do you need a motion for
I
that?
think I need a motion to that effect. Seeing we have no applications for consent and we have no minutes to approve from previous meetings, can I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I will make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Do I have a second?
It was successful. It was enjoyable.
Second the meeting?
All in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. And sorry for my bumbling around, but anyway.
No, you can go have a nap.
Pretty well.
Thank you. I will stop the live streaming and the recording now. Just give it a moment because there is some lag.